can't come to a point where you have done enough preparation, you have learned enough, you have developed enough, you have grown enough, you have thought of every circumstance and challenge that might come your way, and you are 100% ready to go, prepared to be a leader. Welcome to the Weekly Leadership Experience, a place for leaders to get inspired, be challenged, and grow. I am your host, Reshad Oberlander. Let's get started. Today's episode of the Weekly Leadership Experience is brought to you by my 7-day Leadership Growth Challenge. It's a free challenge that I've created, and it's delivered by email over the course of 7 days. I've created 7 compelling questions to challenge various aspects of your leadership, the way you lead, and why you lead. Go to ReshadOberlander.com and scroll down until you find the 7-day leadership challenge, or look for the link in the show notes. Well, hello leaders, and welcome to this week's show. I'm so glad you've joined me today. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. It's great to have you. Before we get started, I'd just like to mention that I still have a giveaway running on my Instagram page for a copy of Becky Morrison's book, The Happiness Recipe. I'd love for you to check that out. Go ahead and enter. The entries are still being taken until Tuesday night, the 20th of April, so you can still enter to win a copy of that book. Go ahead and check that out. Today we're going to be answering some questions from listeners. We've got a few questions here, and they kind of tie together to make a nice little theme. So let's jump right in. The first question is, who is a leader? And that question comes from Ishetu. I hope I said that right. And, it's an interesting question. It's a simple question. It's very succinct, and, it's fundamental to some of the things that I believe about leadership. Who is a leader? So, obviously, we can look at a very literal definition of leader. The Oxford Dictionary describes it very briefly as the person who leads or commands a group, organization, or country. Okay, this sounds pretty straightforward, simple enough, right? Someone who supervises a group of people, whether that's a small group or a big group or a country or what have you. Now, what I say about being a leader, right? And I come back to the quote often from Grace Mary Hopper that says, you manage things, you lead people. So a leader is someone who specifically deals with people. If your job is to deal with things, inanimate objects, other than human beings, really that's a management aspect. It's not to say that you're not a leader, but that role specifically deals with things. Let's say that you're, a fleet manager, for example. Well, you're dealing with vehicles. You're dealing with scheduling maintenance, and you're dealing with maybe buying and selling different things that you don't need anymore. You need some new stuff, like whatever that case is. But then when you start interacting with humans to get those jobs done, then that's where leadership and being a leader comes to play more so. So further from that, who is a leader? A leader doesn't have to be someone who holds a position. A leader does not have to be someone with a title or, organizational authority or something like that. A leader can be simply someone who exhibits qualities that you would expect to see from a leader. You may not be in the position of that. You could be just a team member. You could just be in your home or in a social circle or, just anywhere really. But, the fact of the matter is that if you exhibit behaviors, attitudes, and actions that are consistent with leadership qualities, then I would say that you can be considered a leader. It does not mean maybe that you're a leader all the time, but you can be a leader in a given moment. You can stand up for what's right in a social circle or a public setting. You can, lead and teach your children. You can be a leader for your spouse or partner or friends. And in certain moments, you can be a leader. So realistically, in my opinion, I say that anyone can be a leader. at any time for a variety of reasons. And it has much more to do with the behaviors, attitudes, and actions of leadership that make a person a leader as opposed to their title or authority or position, right? Those things can lend itself to being a leader and can enhance, leadership, but it's not sort of the first gate, in my opinion, right? The first gate is exhibiting the qualities of a leader. So to answer the question, who is a leader? Ultimately, anyone can be a leader. Not everyone is a leader as their career, but anyone can be a leader and is a person that demonstrates leadership qualities and puts the needs of others ahead of their own in most cases. So the second question comes from Mikhail, and the question is, what can a team member do to prepare for their first leadership position? So this dovetails a little bit into the first question of who is a leader, in as much that if you've been listening, anyone can be a leader. So your first leadership position, quote unquote, might be more formalized, but maybe you've already been exhibiting leadership qualities, right? And you've already been getting prepared in that sense to become a leader in a formalized setting. So let's talk about the formalized setting. And so you're going from being a team member, you're going to become now, a manager of something or other, or you're going to be put in a position of influence over a group of people, whether that's a small group of people or a large group of people. And although we're talking about someone's first leadership position, I think that there are certain elements that cross over to whether it's your first position or your 10th position, or whether it's a small promotion or a big promotion, or it's a small position of influence or a big position of influence. I think that there are certain elements of this answer that I'm going to give that will apply to both circumstances or all circumstances. But let's try and narrow it in a little bit to someone who is becoming a leader for the first time formally. So these are things that I have come to learn about myself, and I have seen other new leaders and new managers go through. And it's some things that I think are kind of about the mindset of becoming a leader rather than about developing a bunch of hard skills and taking a class or something like that, which you can do and are good things to do if that's where you like to learn. But there are a couple of things that I think that if you set it in your mind, it's going to take some of the weight and the burden off. It's not going to lower your expectation, but it's going to set you up to have the best chance at success. So the first thing that I think that you should do to prepare for the first leadership position is accept that you can never truly be ready. You just can't. You can't come to a point where you have done enough preparation, you have learned enough, you have developed enough, you have grown enough, you have thought of every circumstance and challenge that might come your way, and you are 100% ready to go, prepared to be a leader. It's a fairy tale. That does not happen. It does not exist. You cannot ever truly be ready. So if you are waiting for that point of readiness to step into a role, or if you are expecting that you are quote unquote ready, you're going to set yourself up for disappointment. And you're going to set yourself up for a tough experience because you're going to have a certain level of expectation that you can face whatever comes your way. And when you face that circumstance and realize that you don't have all the answers and you don't know what to do, and you are maybe going to make a decision or a choice that is going to not work out, you're going to just have a real struggle. And those are things that, I speak from experience. Like, I thought I was ready in certain things to step up to a higher role or to step into a role, and found that I was actually not ready. It's not that I shouldn't have stepped up, but it's that, I had the misconception in my mind that I was completely ready to take on this new challenge. And, the truth is that you're only as ready as where you've been so far, right? And so when you step up, the whole point is to grow and to develop and to improve and to continue learning. Consider that if you were promoted to a manager position or even given a bigger sphere of influence at the early part of 2020, what have you ever faced in your life that would have prepared you for the event of a global pandemic? Like, I would argue that there's very little that would have prepared you for that. I would argue that you probably haven't faced anything at all like that. There's certain elements, perhaps, financial aspects maybe, or what have you, but like, how did you deal with questions from your team? How did you deal with questions from your guests or from your customers? Like, what was it that set you up to be prepared for that? That's a big example, but what have you ever faced that has prepared you for that circumstance? And there's lots of different examples that you've probably never faced before, but you're going to come face to face with, and you just are not ready for. So that's the first thing that I would say about preparing for your first leadership position. Accept that you can never truly be ready. The second thing is that you should accept that you will not get it right all the time and you will make mistakes. And this is tied to the first thing. But you're not always going to get it right. You're not always going to have the answers. And you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. The important thing in that is to own up to it, is to learn from it, is to, say sorry if you need to, but accept the fact that you, as a leader, are going to make mistakes, and you're not going to have all the answers, and you're not going to get it right all the time. And any leader that has been in leadership for more than a small period of time should be able to tell you that, should be able to agree with you that it's okay to make mistakes, and what you do with the mistake is what becomes important. So those, I think, are the two big things that come to mind for me when I think of someone preparing for their first leadership position, that you can never really be ready and that you are not going to get it right all the time. And if you set those things in your mind, it's going to give you an openness to learning. It's going to give you an openness to some compassion for yourself as you continue to grow and develop as a leader. And it's going to set you up for a longer term success and to be able to, carry on and grow as a leader and not just step into your first role and get overwhelmed and get defeated. So, last question for today is from Candace. It says, having worked in a variety of industries, do you find that leadership changes depending on your environment? The short answer is yes and no, which sounds kind of silly, but there are certain things about leadership that I don't think really change no matter what environment you're in. First of all, leadership is always going to be about the people, whether that's the team of people that you work with or your guests or community, whatever. So that's really never going to change regardless of the environment. What does change is the needs of the people. And that can be different from one team member to another, not just, one industry to another, or one, community to another, one business to another. So, the needs of the people will likely be different from one environment to the next, and the degree of, of worker that you're dealing with, whether they're, more of a labor aspect, or whether they're highly skilled or trained. So you're going to have different needs depending on where they are on a variety of different areas. But ultimately, it's about the people. So you need to have flexibility. You need to have the room to move and change and adapt your leadership style to the needs of the business and the needs of the people. And so, yes, in that sense, leadership definitely changes depending on the environment and what your purpose is and what your goals are and what you're there to do. But it doesn't change because you're always dealing with people, and you're always going to be needing to fulfill certain basic functions of a leader, right? And to, and as I've spoken about many times on this podcast, is, serving your team, serving your people, serving the business, serving the guests that are coming in. And that's all about being a servant leader, putting other people's needs ahead of your own. In my opinion, that never changes. So, to answer your question, like I said, yes and no. Yes, because it's going to be different from one place to another, and even from one person to another. So you're going to adapt your leadership style to that need, to what's going on, to the circumstance and environment. But no, it doesn't change because you're ultimately still serving people. So I hope that is an answer to your question. And, when you answer it for yourself, just bear in mind that, it's about the people, and it's about who do you have in front of you and what are their needs and how can you serve them. So that's been the episode for today. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that this enlightened you in some way on being a leader, what you can do to prepare, and then how your leadership might change depending on the environment that you find yourself in. I look forward to speaking with you again next week. In the meantime, stay awesome.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, would you head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, leave me a rating, leave me a review, and share this with a friend. It spreads the word and helps the podcast grow. You can also find me on social media at R.E. Oberlander. Until next time, stay awesome.